I've been playing Monster Hunter World because there isn't really anything else for me to do in Monster Hunter Rise except for trying new weapons and getting to investigation level 120, which I don't really care about. So I've been going back into Monster Hunter World and trying out the weapons I've used in Rise and seeing what the differences are between the games. And it's given me a better appreciation for both games because I know what the differences are between Longsword in World and Rise, and they're pretty substantial, but for the weapons I've only experienced in Rise, I don't have any experience in World to compare them to. So I've been trying to improve with them, and I've noticed a few things for certain weapons like Sword and Shield and Switch Axe. With Switch Axe, I noticed that you don't have as much freedom to turn when attacking in Sword mode. So for instance, in Monster Hunter Rise, if you are in Sword mode and you do a side hop, as long as you input a direction, you can attack pretty much 360 degrees around you. Whereas in World, you're stuck attacking in whatever direction your character is facing. Another thing I noticed is the difference in how the Switch Axe gauge looks and the information it provides. And this also ties into the difference with Wild Swing that I noticed. In World, whenever you do Wild Swings and end with an overhead slam, the Switch Axe gauge will cause the axe portion to glow a sort of orange color, signifying that your axe mode attacks will do more part damage. And it stays like that even when the gauge is full and you're in the amp state. In Rise, that indicator goes away whenever the gauge is fully charged, but there was also another indicator that the damage was increasing in World, and that was the fact that your weapon would glow red exactly the same way when you're doing Perfect Rush with SNS. So Wild Swings would constantly, every swing, just start glowing red like with Perfect Rush, and that was also removed in Rise. Another difference is how the file attacks sound in World and Rise. In World, they sound more distinct, and it makes the weapon feel like it has more weight behind its attacks, whereas in Monster Hunter Rise, it really isn't all that noticeable. I could keep going on about minor differences, but to me, this is what stood out the most. And for Sword and Shield, there's really three differences I noticed. The biggest difference is that Rise and World Sword and Shield have completely different draw attacks and subsequently different Y plus B attacks. In World, it's a lunge forward into an upward slash, and in Rise, it's a shorter lunge into a downward slash. I prefer World's draw attack, I think it just looks much cooler. But another difference is with Perfect Rush. In World, the finishing attack of Perfect Rush is very similar to Zero Sum Discharge, except you only do one attack before launching yourself away from the monster, but it essentially, you hit the monster, you'll attach yourself to that part, and then you'll do an attack that launches you away from the monster, like Zero Sum Discharge without the file attacks. Whereas in Rise, you don't attach yourself to the monster, and instead it's similar to Longsword's Spirit Thrust, which puts you in the air, where you can do, 3 different attacks: the Slash, Plunging Thrust, or the Bash. And the Bash is where I noticed the third biggest difference, to me anyway, and it's that the camera adjusts to go above your player when doing the Falling Bash, and it just makes it feel more cinematic. And I feel like there are probably a lot of differences with regards to those types of camera angle changes, but I haven't used other weapons, but I'm assuming that to be the case because looking back on it, there were a lot of minor things like that in World where the camera would slightly adjust to give it a more cinematic feel, and I just don't really notice that in Rise, so I'm assuming that that's pretty much gone. But those are just the things that I've noticed with the weapons I've used the most in Rise and comparing them to World. But I'm interested in seeing what other differences people have noticed with their main weapon. So yeah, that's pretty much it.